Today on the Locked On Blues podcast, the St. Louis Blues have played 2 games since we last talked: an overtime victory against the New York Rangers and a regulation loss against the Minnesota Wild. Vladimir Tarasenko made his emotional return to St. Louis. Wonderful tribute video, wonderful quotes afterwards about the fans. Going to be talking about all of that and more, plus the Blues' final 2 games of the regular season on today's episode of the Locked On Blues podcast. Should be a good episode. Make sure you stay tuned.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Locked On Blues podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source for Blues content. I am your host, as always, Josh Hyman. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the show. I've been covering the St. Louis Blues for about 5 or so years, whether it be writing, tweeting, or podcasting. If this isn't your first time, thanks for coming back. Thanks for tuning in. Making Locked On Blues part of your daily routine, making the show your hashtag first listen. I've been seeing a lot of good comments and stuff, good support lately, and I really appreciate all that. I recognize you. You know, if you comment on YouTube or on Twitter frequently, I recognize your name, so I appreciate that. I'm gonna be reading through some of them, from today's episode, etc., showing out some love. Anyways, got a fun episode today. Blues have, like I said, played 2 games since we last talked. One against the New York Rangers, with the return of Vladimir Tarasenko. Going to spend a lot of time talking about that. Tarasenko, his reaction to the tribute video and all that. And then they also played a game against the Minnesota Wild, which they struggled a little bit, giving up 5 goals, but scoring 3. Plus, the Blues only have 2 games left in the regular season, and both of which are going to be started by Joel Hofer, as he was recently called up. So Jordan Binnington's season is done, unless anything changes, of course. Lot to get into, obviously, like I said. But gonna take it slow. We only got a few games left. Hopefully we'll get one of the last 2 starts. Apologies there for the misinformation. So Jordan Binnington is not done for the season, but Thomas Greiss is. But hopefully we'll get one more start, get a chance to get a look at him there. Robert Bortuzzo done for the year, etc., etc. But before we get into any of that, let's just jump into the Rangers game. Gonna spend a little bit of time talking about the game. More so, want to talk about the return of Vladimir Tarasenko and what that meant, and post game quote, which I thought was interesting. And yeah, game started out pretty solid as Alexei Toropchenko, a guy who I think has had a pretty solid last few weeks, got himself an unassisted goal, his 10th of the season. Good to see him hit double digits, give the Blues a 1-0 lead in the second period. First period was kind of back and forth. Low intensity, low action, only 14 total shots on goal in that first period, 8 coming from St. Louis, 6 from the New York Rangers. And yeah, I mean, heading into the second, it was definitely a tough one. The Rangers got a ton of shots on goal with 12. Blues only got 5, but only thing that mattered was the goal total, and the Blues got one of them things, putting them up 1-0. However, the lead did not last too long, as who but Vladimir Tarasenko scored on the power play, his 18th of the year, to tie the game up for the New York Rangers. However, Tyler Pitlick, of course, everyone expected him to score along with Torpachenko this game. Gets his 7th of the year to put the Blues back on top about halfway through the third. However, the Rangers wanted to earn themselves at least a point, and they did so with Vincent Trocheck getting his 21st of the year. Another point for Tarasenko on the assist, with about 2 minutes to go in the game. And, all the tanking fans were excited there, hoping that maybe the Blues would find a way to only get 1 point out of this game. However, Kasperi Kapanen said no tanking for us today, as he got his 15th goal of the year, continued his wonderful, wonderful play with the St. Louis Blues. Scoring just a minute into overtime, giving the Blues the victory, spoiling Tarasenko's return to St. Louis. But it was really great to see him back. I was wondering if I was going to be a little bit bitter. You can't really prepare yourself for that as a fan until you actually witness it. But I was happy. The tribute video definitely got me a little misty-eyed. They chose a wonderful selection of highlights and just plays and moments that encapsulated his career, showing Ari, who those of you who don't know, Ari was a fan who was battling cancer, who Vladimir Tarasenko spent a lot of time with, and it was memories like that beyond the plays on the ice that I think really cemented Vladimir Tarasenko as a Blues legend. And that tribute video definitely got me a little teary eyed. And he looked very appreciative. He gave a good quote after the game. He said, "I'm not gonna lie, it was very hard for me emotionally. I have a really good feeling when I walked into the building and see all the guys I knew, have a chance to talk with my teammates, my friends. This place will be special in our heart," probably referring to him and his family. Whatever people say in the media, we always love this city. We always appreciate all the effort, the support the club and the fans and the friends gave us. Teammates, everybody, the city, the fans will be in our hearts forever. So he is very clearly very, very grateful for the time that he spent in St. Louis. And as fans, I think it would be selfish of us to not be equally as grateful for the years he put in. I don't think I've seen a lot of people criticizing him and actively rooting against him or anything like that. Obviously you get the whole Sammy Blay and blah 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 versus Tarasenko, but I think at the end of the day, he's always going to be a fan favorite. I still have his jersey up on the wall, like I've said countless times, and I'm not taking it down at least until the start of next season. Maybe I'll get a new jersey or something to commemorate someone else. But I mean, he was the reason why I started following the Blues as intensely as I did. So fun to watch play in his younger years, and battled through injuries, battled through adversity, brought the Blues a cup like he promised he would early on in his career. So great to see him back. Nice to see him get a goal. Never thought I'd see the day that he would score in the Blues home arena for another team, but it is what it is. That being said, let's jump into talking about the Minnesota Wild game, which the Blues won 5-2 or lost 5-3. Man, I'm a little bit off today. Sorry, long day at work. Anyways, before we get into that, I want to tell you guys about FanDuel Sportsbook. Grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back, and there is no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to fanduel.com/locked on, sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. A lot of fun stuff. Especially, baseball throws some interesting sort of parlays into the fold. You can get bet on strikeouts, home runs, first at bats, all that fun stuff. Plus, as always, you can bet on hockey, basketball, etc. Anything you want. Don't miss your chance to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to fanduel.com/locked on to sign up. FanDuel, official betting partner of Major League Baseball. And we'll be right back with the second half of today's episode. All right. St. Louis Blues recently visited Minnesota in a crucial game for them in terms of keeping pace of division. The Blues were not able to play spoiler and let the Wild walk away with a 5-3 victory. However, the Blues did generate 40 shots on goal, which is a milestone I feel like I've been talking about for months on this show. It's probably happened once or twice and I just wasn't paying attention, but especially as of late, the shot generation has been such an issue for the Blues, trending upwards a little bit lately and finally reaching that 40 shot on goal plateau. Again, I don't know if this statistic held, but about, a third of the way through the season, halfway through the season, a couple months ago, there was a statistic that I saw that Blues were one of only three teams that had yet to get 40 shots on goal in a game, and those other two teams were the two worst teams in the NHL. So shot generation has been an issue for the Blues all year, but it was good to see them go up against a pretty strong defense in Minnesota, um, and generate a lot of shots on goal and play from behind and play well from behind against a team that was treating it like a playoff game and had a lot of intensity. Sammy Blay continued his tear in the first period, getting himself his ninth goal of the year and ninth as a member of the St. Louis Blues, obviously, from Jakub Vrana and Justin Falk, who Justin Falk had a decent stretch of games after a really, really poor regular season. However, the lead was short lived as the Blues just fell apart on the power play, giving up two shorthanded goals in about 20 seconds, one unassisted from Hartman, who, you know, scored off of Jordan Binnington, trying to go out after a puck and completely failing. And it would have been cool if he pulled it off, but he kind of just looked like an idiot. And of course, it was against Ryan Hartman, the guy who got him thrown out a couple weeks ago. So tough there, tough bulletin board material for the Minnesota Wild. Hartman mocking Binnington a little bit after scoring that goal, and you could tell it definitely rattled Binnington a little bit as he gave up another kind of weak goal just 20 seconds later to Sam Steele. And just like that, the Blues are up 1-0, heading to the power play. You're hoping, maybe they'll be up 2-0 after this power play. Surprise, they're down 2-1. Um, Real rough stuff. Real rough stuff. One of the worst special teams performances in a period I've seen from any NHL team ever, much less the Blues this season. It was rough. And that really unfortunately set the momentum for Minnesota for the rest of the game. They got a power play late in the second period and cashed in, going up 3-1 before scoring with just over 30 seconds left in the period to go up 4-1. And it's a disappointing one. The Blues played really, really well in that first period, apart from that incredible lapse from the power play group, giving up two shorties. They had 18 shots on goal in the period, which I'd have to imagine is close to their highest in a period all season, if not their highest in a period all season. I know there are some games where it feel like they have only 20, 21, 22 shots on goal. So 18 in a period is ridiculous for them. Um, Obviously didn't pay off as they were only able to get that one goal, but it was encouraging, seeing the offense come alive like that. Second period only got 10 shots on goal. Third period got 12. So, I say only, but those are good numbers for the Blues as of lately. And I know I'm harping on shots on goal a lot, and it seems like an arbitrary thing to focus on, but um, it's been very frustrating watching, games and looking up at the shot ticker and seeing the Blues down 10 every single time. It's like, they're capable of so much better. And I feels like they were overthinking a little bit, trying to force perfect shots. And that first period, they were just throwing anything and everything at the goal. Didn't quite pay off. It would have if they didn't fall apart on that power play. But heading into the third period, expectations were low. But you never know. This Blues team has done crazier things. And it looks like they might be in the midst of another comeback as Jake Neighbors, a guy who I absolutely loved watching play lately. He has been so fun to watch, playing with such a passion, such a fire. In what is officially his rookie year. He has been so good, so wise beyond his years in terms of his play style and his ability. And that's been great to see. Gets himself his sixth of the year. I expect he will get a good chunk more than that next season as he's really kind of heating up towards the end of this regular season with the physicality and the playmaking and obviously the offense as a whole. And then Pavel Buchnevich got himself a goal, his 26th of the year. All of a sudden, the Blues are just down one with a good chunk of the third period to go, and it felt like, the Wild kind of came out in this period a little bit flat, kind of assumed that they had the game, under wraps, that it was, locked in after two periods, and the Blues flipped the switch as they have been doing lately, and came back and made it a game. Unfortunately, they weren't able to get that tying goal as Gustafsson had a really, really strong period for the Minnesota Wild. I think, against a weaker goalie, the Blues honestly tied that game up. But Gustafsson held strong. The Wild kind of flipped that switch and snapped back into it like a good playoff team should be able to do. Brodin eventually got the empty netter for the Wild. But, encouraging performance for the Blues. I looked at, my last episode, I talked about Blues have 4 games left. What do you want to see out of them? And I'm not looking at wins and losses. I'm just looking at a team that gives a crap, preferably. And it feels like ever since they've been eliminated from playoff contention, they've cared more than ever. Um, take of that what you will. Could the Blues have been a playoff team if they played at this pace all season? Yeah, absolutely. They've been, I think, like the 4th best team in hockey since like March 7th. I forget. I saw a stat. In terms of point percentage, since the Blues have picked it up, they've been one of the best teams in hockey. Um, and that's, every other team is obviously in the playoff race in that list. So who knows? Definitely a season of wasted potential for the Blues. However, they do still have 2 games left. So in this upcoming third and final segment, I'm going to be talking about my expectations for those final 2 games. Going to get a little bit of an interesting roster dynamic with a couple guys being out. Before I get into that, want to head to one more short break. Don't go anywhere, though. I'll be right back. All right. So the St. Louis Blues only have 2 games remaining in the regular season. One, I believe, against the Dallas Stars. And I believe their final, 2 against the Dallas Stars. Back to back, home and home, 2 more games. Then that's it. Joel Hofer gets the call up. He will get at least one start. Apologies for the scare in the beginning. Jordan Binnington's season is not over. I misread that, and I said Joel Hofer will get 2 starts. Silly me. I'm bad at reading. Hugh McKing, a guy that was called up, could potentially get in both or at least one of those games, which is exciting. He's a prospect that I think could be a very solid bottom 6 player for the Blues. And Robert Bortuzzo is likely done for the season, along with Thomas Greiss and I think Marco Scandella as well. So gonna see a bit of interesting depth in terms of what the Blues are gonna be running in these next few games. Joel Hofer getting called back up. I'm really, really happy for that. I think his time was cut short a little bit in his last stint with the Blues. He played really, really well. And then, just due to Binnington's suspension being over and other roster situations, he got sent down after a real stinker of a game, which he was probably always going to get sent down after that game unless he pitched like a 58 save shutout. It was just unfortunate to see, his run with the Blues end that way. I'm really glad he's going to get himself another start in a back-to-back against the Dallas Stars. I would assume he would get it tomorrow night, so Binnington can get the final start of the season, but you never know. The Stars are still pretty tight in that playoff race for the Central Division. I'm going to pull up the standings here just to get a good look at it. But meaningful games for the Dallas Stars for sure. Not so much for the Blues, obviously, but the Stars find themselves in second place with 104 points, tied with the Colorado Avalanche. However, the Avalanche have played one less game. The Avalanche have 3 games to go. The Stars have 2. So the Stars could find themselves as low as third in the Central Division if St. Louis beats them both times and Minnesota wins their last 2, or they could find themselves at first in the Central Division if they win their last 2 and Colorado only wins 1 out of their 3. So big, big, big games for the Dallas Stars, especially if they want to avoid Minnesota in that first round and play one of Winnipeg or Seattle. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting to see how the Blues respond to a team playing for their playoff lives. Obviously, the Stars have clinched a playoff spot, but like I said, the Central Division is within 2 points of first and third. So it's going to be interesting. The Stars obviously would prefer to have home ice advantage. They would prefer to be that 1 seed and play a wild card team instead of playing Minnesota, a team that they've been sort of battling with for the last few weeks for that third spot, a team that I think would give them a really hard time in the first round. And then you got a team like Colorado, who obviously the Blues don't see, but had an underwhelming year up until recently. They've dealt with a ton of injuries. Obviously coming off their historic season last year, you'd expect them to be, one of the top teams in the league. Not quite the case as they did, like I said, get ravaged with injuries. However, they've picked up the pace lately, and they probably, really want that first spot in the Central. And the Blues have a lot of power with that. Obviously, it doesn't matter for the Blues, what seed the Stars are in, but I think there's probably some pride about going out there and the Stars have a little bit extra motivation rather than just wanting to win a regular season game. I think Blues players will take that, hopefully a little bit personally and use that to drive them and reach that playoff intensity that the Stars will most likely be playing with and give the fans a treat for the final 2 games of the year. I think most fans, myself included, hoped and expected to see the Blues play in a playoff game or 2 this season. Obviously not going to happen, but they have a chance to play in some high important games over these last 2 with the Dallas Stars. Obviously they let Minnesota beat them, not let Minnesota beat them, but Minnesota getting their win against St. Louis recently really helped them as they are still 2 points behind Dallas. But if they had lost that game, they would pretty much be out of the hunt for the second seed. So Blues have an interesting opportunity to play spoiler here. In terms of the Tankathon standings, the Blues currently find themselves with the odds for the 10th pick. They are locked in, get at least a top 11 pick, if I'm doing my math right. However, Detroit, 1 point behind them, and Washington, 2 points behind them. Unfortunately, Washington's next game is against the Boston Bruins with a chance to set the all-time points record. So I don't know if they're going to be able to come away with a victory there. However, if the Blues do lose their final 2 games and Detroit, Washington, and Vancouver win a combination of a few, or if not all of their final games, the Blues could find themselves with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th best odds in the draft lottery, which right now they're in 10th. So very, very interesting stuff in terms of the draft lottery as the season comes to a close. Like I said, the Blues have an opportunity to end up anywhere from 7th to, I think, 11th. They're currently 4 points behind Ottawa. They would be tied with Ottawa if they win their last two. I don't know who has the tiebreaker. Um, so either 10th or 11th. Um, but it would be spectacular to see them get a top 10 pick. Again, that would take Detroit winning one of their last two, Washington winning two of their last two, or getting 3 points in their last two, and Vancouver doing the same, and the Blues losing out. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes as a result of those games. That being said, that is all the time I have for you guys today. I want to thank each and every one of you so much for listening and giving all the support lately. It's been a great season of hockey. Got a few game recap episodes left to go. Didn't get a chance to do the blue or false poll thing next week, but looking forward to doing that either tomorrow, Thursday, or Friday, obviously. So stay tuned for that. If you want to participate in those, fan polls and stuff, follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Blues, or subscribe on YouTube at Locked On Blues. I read every single comment. Try to react to some of them. I'm going to be doing that while I'm editing this episode. So definitely give a shout out there. Follow it wherever you get your podcast, free and available, every podcast platform. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Hyman NHL. Thank you all so much for listening. And as always, let's go Blues.